Thank you for tuning in to the Unjiggered podcast. If you enjoy listening, please consider subscribing and giving us a rating on your podcast service of choice. Also, don't forget to like and tag us on Instagram at unjiggered_media. Thank you to everybody for listening, and now on with the show. You're listening to Unjiggered, a bartender podcast where we interview highly successful bartenders about their careers, lives, and the passion of bartending. This week we have Jay Khan on the show, founder of Koa in Hong Kong. We chat about working in a karaoke bar, his opinion on working in hotels, and he gives us a short lesson on tequila versus mezcal. With this podcast, we want to peel back the mask and discover just how the greats really became the greats. So sit back and enjoy.
Hello, my name is Jay. I'm the founder of Koa. It's a bar in Hong Kong that specializes in agave spirits.
Thank you very much for finding the time. How are you?
I'm very well, man. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
You got into travel quite a bit recently, yeah?
Yeah, the past couple of months, I guess. You know, right now, this is not the best time in Hong Kong, so we want to take this opportunity to travel more and do more promotion.
So you have a very interesting background. That's why we're here to talk about who you are and how you managed to open your own bar. So first of all, would you like to tell us where you're from?
Well, I was born in Hong Kong. I grew up in Hong Kong. My mom was born in Hong Kong, but originally I'm actually from a country that we're not supposed to drink alcohol, sell alcohol. I'm actually from Pakistan by my blood, but I was born in Hong Kong, grew up there, and I've lived my life in Hong Kong. I went to Australia, lived there for a couple of years, but majority of my time in Hong Kong actually.
And how did you get into bartending?
Well, I guess it was by accident. My first F&B job was working in a dim sum restaurant.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I went into this restaurant nearby where I used to live, and I walked in and I was like, I want a job, and they said, "Are you okay with clearing dirty dishes?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll do it." And then that day where I worked, you know, it was intense, and I quit the next day.
Really?
It was tough. I think I was only like 18 years old at the time.
Start.
It was intense, but because I could speak Cantonese, I was born in Hong Kong, so they gave me the job, and I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. It was tough. Then I actually worked at a Hard Rock Cafe in Hong Kong.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, it was the old one in Hong Kong, which already closed down. I used to work there because a lot of my schoolmates were actually working there. So that's where actually I started working in F&B. And it was on the floor, carrying hot plates. And there was a lot of study to do about food. And I wasn't that into F&B at that time. I just wanted to do it probably because I couldn't get a job. And again, I didn't last too long there. And I moved on. I went to this karaoke bar in Hong Kong, which was actually in a building. Even now, I guess, but back then, you know, it was very popular in Hong Kong where you have designated buildings with full of karaoke bars, you know, from the first floor all the way to the top.
So you've got like one building with like karaoke bars and that's it?
Yeah, so every floor they have a different bar, but they're all very similar.
Okay.
Similar business model. You pay at the door, you go inside, you drink until your liver can't take it anymore. And so basically what I did was I started giving out my CV from the top floor and walked down all the way to the bottom. I got a couple of calls. People were impressed because I could speak Cantonese, and they wanted to hire me because they wanted to have somebody that doesn't look like Chinese in the bar. I think it was for marketing, probably. So I got a job, and I started working on the floor. But as you know, working in karaoke bars is nothing sexy because people drink a lot there. And eventually, you know, like people like us, we need to do everything, you know. We need to clean all the mess. People vomit.
Yeah.
We used to make, you know, drinks that were sweet, strong. People order Long Island iced tea because they wanted to get drunk. There was this drink called Nothing, which is very popular in Hong Kong. It consists of vodka, Malibu, Midori, pineapple juice. So there's no citrus.
Drink, eh?
There's no citrus, but people loved it.
Really?
Yeah, people loved it. Sex on the Beach, that was another popular drink. Snowball. You know Snowball?
Yeah, but who drinks snowballs nowadays?
Well, it used to. And now, of course, now nobody drinks it. But back then, you know, like it was a thing, you know, like people want something sweet and light, you know, they would order a Snowball. Yeah, those were a few drinks that were actually making that. So that was my start in the career, actually.
And since you worked in a karaoke bar, your voice must be amazing. Are you good at singing?
You know, because I work in a karaoke bar, that's why I hate going to karaoke. It's like a lot of my friends, they always invite me to go sing karaoke, and I just can't. It just brings back, like some really bad memories.
You're like PTSD every time you see a karaoke booth.
Yeah.
And at what stage did you decide that you wanted to start to make proper cocktails?
I think I went to Australia, Melbourne actually, in the year 2008 and 9. I was working right across Black Pearl, Black Pearl was and is a legendary bar, and that's where actually I took bartending seriously, because I used to frequent the bar. I used to work across the road, and I saw the bartenders there. They were not just making cocktails, but they were engaging with the customers. They were asking, the likes and dislike of the customers. So it really changed my mind, and that's where I actually got serious about bartending.
What sort of because you're very much of an agave guy, right? At what stage did you start thinking that that's your sort of favorite spirit category?
So after Australia, I went back to Hong Kong, and they were opening a bar called Lily and Bloom, which unfortunately just closed down. But it was an institution. It opened for a long time, for I think from 2010 to I think until early this year. It's considered an institution. It was probably the first bar not in a hotel that was focusing on cocktails, and it really changed the bar scene in Hong Kong. And I was lucky enough to be part of the opening team, and that's where it was a speakeasy bar. It was an American style bar. A lot of American bartenders, when they came to Hong Kong, they would come and they would bring, bottles of Mezcal, actually. And that's where I actually got introduced to Mezcal for the first time in 2010. It wasn't like a love at first sight. It was very, very interesting to me, because no other spirit actually tasted that unique. And since then, slowly and slowly, more tequilas and more Mezcal started to come into Hong Kong, because more cocktail bars were actually opening. And that was kind of like my beginning, to how I got introduced to tequila and Mezcal.
What is it that you really like about Mezcal?
Well, I think Mezcal is one of the most terroir-driven spirit in the world. If there's one spirit that I personally think that's close to a wine, would be a Mezcal. Because when you talk about Mezcal, you talk about agave varieties. It's just like wine. You talk about grape varieties. You talk about the place where it's from. Different parts of Mexico, the way they produce Mezcal can vary as well. For example, if you're in Oaxaca, and there's this town called Santa Catarina Minas, where they are known to distill their Mezcal in clay pots. So that's unique, it's not just there, but it's unique. When you look at Santa Catarina Minas, you know that this Mezcal is made from clay pot, actually. So there's identities, like characters, depending on where the Mezcal is actually produced from. To me, that is really fascinating.
How long have you worked in this bar? The first one you tried in Hong Kong with the Mezcal?
Lily and Bloom. I didn't work too long, because although I tried Mezcal for the first time there, but actually, I think within a year I left, because I was actually really into whiskey then.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Whiskey was my thing back then, and I moved to Macau. I worked in Macau for a good 3 years because they were opening a whiskey bar. It was called the Macallan Bar in Galaxy Hotel. And at that time, they were bringing in around 400 to 500 different labels of whiskey. And there was nowhere else, with that many whiskey, where I lived. So I took the job. I went on, and I was part of the opening team there as well. So that was me back then. And then I came back to Hong Kong after around 3 years, and I started working in a few different places. And there's a bar in Hong Kong called Agave Bar. So Agave Bar, it was a restaurant with a bar, but they had a lot of tequilas. They didn't have any Mezcal, but they had a lot of tequilas. And that's where I got to actually try some very unique tequilas, because they brought those tequilas in around the year 2000. And that was the year also where agave was in high demand because of the shortage. It was way more expensive, but they brought a container in from Mexico to Hong Kong to actually open agave in Hong Kong. The agave is the name of the restaurant. Mm-hmm. And that's where they actually invited people like Julio Bermejo for the first time in Hong Kong.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and he made Tommy's margaritas. At that time, I was too young. I was still going to school, but people, like the person who was behind agave actually told me all about this. And so I got a job there. It was a big group actually, so I wasn't just working in agave, but taking care of the beverage program for the entire group. But agave was where I spent most time at because of the tequilas and get to try a lot of tequilas. And then from there onwards, I thought, I should actually go to Mexico and actually see how this product is made. And then I started going to Mexico. It was approximately 7 years ago where I went to Mexico for the first time. I just changed my mind. I've been to so many distilleries from different spirits, but nothing was so romantic as producing tequila and mezcal. It was extremely labor intensive. There was so many passion involved. People were talking about the spirit as if, that was part of their life. Mm-hmm. It was just fascinating for me.
So before we get into that, Macau, what was the regional differences? Because for some people who have not visited the region, Macau and Hong Kong and China, they're sort of like the same thing, but they're not. So what were the regional differences that you found between Macau and Hong Kong, and how did you go about settling your career or like adjusting your style based on the market where you were?
So moving into Macau, that was my first job in a hotel. It was a casino hotel, and I moved there not because I wanted to work in a hotel. It was just because of that bar. Mm-hmm. But it was difficult in Macau because the market there is, I don't think it was ready, and it's still ready for cocktails. Because approximately over 80% of your travelers, tourists going to Macau are actually from mainland China. And most of them are actually not our generation. They're like older, and they just don't have any understanding for tequila. Whiskey, for cocktails.
Yeah, cocktails, yeah.
Whatever I say is always tequila. So it was difficult, but I tried. I was there for 3 years. I tried, but even now, after so many years, I don't think much has changed, to be honest.
Uh-huh. And you think that you were exposed to hotel environments, the hotel environment for the first time. Is this something you like or not really? What were the pros and cons of?
I hate working in hotels.
Okay.
Like, I extremely hate, and you know that. You work in a hotel as well. There's a lot of things you want to do. It just holds you back because there's just so many layers of approval you require. Things you want to do. Bartenders have, when you work in a bar, you have plenty of ideas. And sometimes you just want to do it right away. You just don't want to wait for it. You just want to do it. But working in hotels kind of like hold you back. You really need to like follow by the book, and you need a lot of approvals in order to do something. So it was good for me to work in a hotel to kind of learn, how it is working in a hotel. But I don't think I'll ever
do it again. Yeah, I think it's a love or hate thing. Like it's we all find our styles. It's important. I think that's why it's important, as you mentioned, to make sure that you try all different styles of bars in order to find what is it that fits your personality, right?
Okay, wait, I want to add to that. Hotels now, they're slightly different. Like I've seen like hotels where they hire bartenders with tattoos. Back then, when I was working in hotels, that was not allowed. I had a tattoo on my finger. They asked me to like tape it up so people don't see it.
Yeah, that's such a stupid thing, isn't it?
Yeah. Then now there are so many great cocktail bars in hotels, but because now I think the mindset is changing a little bit. Now your management, senior management, actually supporting this. But back then, no. Back then they were only looking at numbers. They're like, okay, especially when I was working in Macau, like I said, 80% of our travelers from China, they were not into cocktails. So why would they support you in doing something that promotes cocktail? Because it doesn't show on paper. Yeah,
of course.
So I guess the timing where I had working in hotels was just not right. So it didn't give me like a great experience. But I learned different things. I learned how to operate a few outlets at the same time. I managed way more people than I would have. So it teaches you a lot of things, working in hotels.
Yeah, no, of course. And that's why, to have a plethora of different experiences under your belt is actually beneficial, right? So we are now getting back to your Hong Kong bits. How was meeting Julio Bermejo? Did you know who he was at the time, or?
I knew, yeah, of course. I mean, I knew Julio because of Tommy's Margarita, to be honest. That was like a long time ago. I think the first time I met Julio was actually in Macau. He came for the Agave Love that was organized by Phil Bailey a few years ago. And yeah, I get to see him in Macau. And yeah, we went out, we had a good time. We end up, eating supper, maybe breakfast. I was like 6 a.m. in Macau and drinking ocho. Yeah, it was really interesting.
What were the first distilleries that you visited in Mexico?
So I contact Guillermo Souza from Fortaleza on Facebook. I didn't know anybody there back then. I think he was in New Orleans. He gave me Stefano's contact, who, is the brand ambassador. And so I got in touch with him via email. And he actually got me in touch with even more people, such as Eduardo from Arete, Sergio from Don Fulano. And then from them, like, I get to know more people. And it was just people to people to people. And every time I went to Mexico, I get to know even more people. So that was the start, actually. So I think people there were really, really nice and helpful. And they're very, very welcoming. So that added to the experience, for me, like that was like the hospitality for me. I get to know so many people in such a short time. I went to Jalisco for the first time, and then the same trip I actually went down to Oaxaca. My first Mezcal distillery that I went, or Palenque, that I visited was actually called the Los Javis, the Mezcal. I was in Santiago Matatlan, which is not too far from the main city, like around half an hour drive. So Javi, which is the master distiller now, I met him in Jalisco on the same trip, actually. And it was just coincidence, from there on, like I get to know more people from them. And yeah, I've been going to Mexico now at least twice every year for the past 6-7 years now.
So you've been quite a lot, huh?
Yeah.
So in terms of regional styles, would you like to talk to us about what are the main regional differences in between tequila and mezcal? So
the majority of tequila comes from Jalisco. So Jalisco is like the largest market. I'd say approximately over 90% of all tequilas that we have now comes from Jalisco alone. And for mezcal, the major state is Oaxaca. Oaxaca is where most of the mezcals are produced from. And in terms of variety for tequila, you can only use the blue agave. For mezcal, you can use any type as long as there's enough sugar to ferment, as long as the agaves are not inedible. You can use that to make mezcal. Majority of the mezcal are made from an agave called espadin, because espadin takes one of the least amount of time to grow. And it also produces a lot of clones around the mother plant, which is called hijuelos. So those clones are basically harvested and then probably spend a couple of years or maybe a year in nursery, and then they take it out and replant it back into the field. So it doesn't go through the natural pollination, so the seeding process. That's why it can grow really faster and quicker. But then there are some varieties of agave that cannot be produced using clones, so you need to actually use natural pollination. Most mezcals you find in Mexico would have a term on the bottle, which is called, translated into wild agave, and those agaves are basically going out in the wild and finding whatever is available and harvest them and cook them, wild ferment, and depending on where it is, it's distilled from copper pot to clay pot, or even sometimes in wood, which is also known as the Filipino style, where you have distillation, condensation happening in the same vessel. So there's a lot of varieties, actually, a lot of diversity in producing mezcal.
So you mentioned that the majority of it, like you love it because of you've got these regional styles. Do you find it difficult to find consistency in mezcal due to the fact that some of them are like wild?
The beauty about mezcal is it doesn't have to be consistent. I mean, every brand, they have their own, DNA. You could taste the DNA in the product, but it could vary from batch to batch. And even the ABV doesn't have to be always the same. But some commercial products, it's always consistent. But then the interesting ones would be, it is really based on batch to batch, actually. An example would be, we had this raicilla called La Venenosa, which is the variety is called Puntas. So it is one of the, in the mezcal world, you can't distill or bottle mezcal that is above 55%. So that's your limit. But raicilla, because it is not legally a mezcal, they could distill it over that. And the Puntas is actually above 60% alcohol by volume. So the first batch we actually received was around 60.5% ABV. And then the second batch we had was actually 61.5% ABV. So it varies a little bit, and that's the beauty, For example, talking about Ocho tequila, the identity positioning of Ocho is basically agaves that are harvested from different plantation in different years. Because different agave produced in different part of, let's say, even in that tiny microclimate, can taste so different actually, and that is the beauty. Then you can compare. So we're not talking about like big brands. We're talking about these tiny brands that are family owned. They are producing it because they love the product, and they're not doing it because they want to make tons of money out of it. It's just their passion,
and that's what makes it unique, right?
Exactly.
So at what stage did you start feeling that you wanted to open your own bar?
I think it was me going to Mexico too much, and I had a lot of bottles that I was collecting. I was in my home, and my wife, she wasn't happy about it because she's like, we're not supposed to keep alcohol in our house. I'm like, great, then I think I should open a bar.
That's it, done.
That was the beginning.
And how did you go about it? Because Hong Kong is a very competitive market, and I'm sure renting it's not easy. How did you go about opening your bar, and what were the challenges you went through?
I think opening Koa was, I was very lucky because I basically co-founded Koa. So I have a business partner. She's not from the industry. So one day, just like us right now, we're sitting right across. We're having a cup of tea together. And then I just casually told her I wanted to open a bar. And then I think she was on the right page. And then she was like, I wanted to do something as well. And that was the beginning. And from that chat we had, within less than 3 months, the bar was open.
Oh, that's
we were super lucky because, it takes such a long time sometimes to find a location. People spend maybe 2-3 years just to find the perfect location for the restaurant or bar. But I think everything for us came together really quickly. However, of course, we didn't have an easy time because we're talking about agave spirits, and agave is not one of the most approachable product in terms of people's perception. And when people hear about mezcal and tequila, it's not the first thing that excites them. So it was difficult. Like, I think we opened in 2017, December, 1st of December. The first 3 months we were losing money. It was tough. I was talking to my business partner. I'm like, what should we do? I don't think this is doing well. But it was also because, December is not the perfect time to open a bar because a lot of people are out of town and a lot of businesses, they are doing corporate parties. And when you're new, nobody knows who you are. So they don't even look for you. Then January is, again, the beginning of the year is always tough because a lot of people are dry January. They don't drink that much. And again, because we were new.
And then credit card bills start to pile up. So January
absolutely, yeah. And then February in Hong Kong, it's Chinese New Year. And again, people are out of town. There's holidays and holidays and holidays. So we were suffering. But then March, we braked even for that month and with maybe a little bit of profit, not a lot, but just a little bit of profit. And we were like, oh shit, okay. Now there's at least something good, for us.
Like a glimmer of hope, right?
Exactly. So then we went on, and since then every month we got better and better and better. And I would really, really thank the industry, especially in Hong Kong. The bars and bartenders actually really helped us verbally promoted Koa to their guests. So we get a lot of people actually from other bars around us.
So you decided to open a bar that, of course, is agave focused. We mentioned why. However, how did you decide to structure it? Because like an agave bar can be a place where you just go and have different kinds of tequilas, but yours is a very cocktail focused bar. So what was the brief when you opened the Koa?
You won't believe it, but the first time when I went to Mexico, that was the time I actually wanted to open a bar that was agave focused. And I had it ready on a piece of paper. And then from the piece of paper, it went onto my PowerPoint. And I just had this vision of myself one day owning a bar. And I had this concept brief ready. And every few months, I would amend it to refine it, basically. So I had this ready like few years back. So that's why when I had this chat with my business partner, it just took us 3 months to open the bar because I had everything at the back of my head. I know exactly what I wanted to do. So it was actually prepared a while ago.
So how's Goa? Tell us about Goa.
Goa is doing really well now. I mean, it's more established. More people know about the place. We get a lot of tourists, a lot of travelers coming, and it's more consistent. We get more regular customers coming in as well. So basically what we do at Goa is we focus a lot on Mexican products. We're not just limited to tequila and mezcal. We have raicilla, we have sotol, we have charanda, which is a type of Mexican rum. And then we also have rums from Mexico that are actually made from sugarcane. So they're like, Martinique rum, for example, the agricole rum. Agricole style. And then we also have some products from different countries, agave spirit made in different countries. So we do collect those as well. We have a gin that's mezcal based, that's really distilled with botanicals, for example. So we don't just focus on mezcal and tequila, but we wanted to like broaden the category and find something more interesting. And yeah, we've been trying to collect more and more products. Hopefully coming year, we also wanted to go and look for mezcals that are not maybe bottled legally.
Okay.
That's because that's the best product. Like when you go out to Mexico, you go to these remote areas and you see this guy making a spirit only for his village, and that's the best thing. When you taste it, you're like, oh wow, because they don't have any restriction, they don't have to follow any guidelines, they just make it the way they want to make it. And that tastes the most delicious actually. So that's something phase 2 hopefully coming here in 2020. I will spend more time going around Mexico and find something really unique actually.
Oh, what a pity for you.
Somebody got to do it, man.
So how do you manage to import these spirits? Because here in Asia, it's not very easy to just get whatever you want, right? So what channels do you use in order for you to import stuff?
We hand carry a lot of stuff. We also talk to our friends that are traveling to the States or to Mexico or even to UK, wherever they can get something that we can't get in Hong Kong. And of course, the product has to be good. And we also talk to distributors to help us bring, something different. Like recently we did a collaboration with Arete to do like a private label for our bar actually. So things like that. I mean, whenever we get a chance, opportunity, we try and get something that's not available in Hong Kong. I would say right now, maybe over 60% of the products are not available in Hong Kong that we have. But I think the market is growing in Hong Kong as well. So I've seen a lot of like new brands of mezcal and tequila is actually now available in Hong Kong. I've been doing guest bartending in many places, and I think probably Hong Kong and Singapore are the top 2 markets in terms of, the quantity of mezcal and tequila you can actually find. Sometimes it's difficult when you do get shift and you go to a place and they don't have much. They might only have like 3 or 4 brands of mezcal available in the entire country. So we're very lucky, and Koa is the kind of concept. If you want to do it in Asia, it has to be, either in Hong Kong or Singapore, or maybe even in Japan, like Tokyo, for example, because, I think they have a growing market there as well.
You also love fermented stuff or kombuchas. How did you get into that?
I think it all started from tepache. So tepache is this fermented beverage from Mexico, traditionally made with pineapple skin, water, sugar. They're left to ferment, and then you could add spices to it if you want to. In Mexico, they just pour out of a clay and into your glass, and then you could like put tahini on top and chili powder. But what we've done, I've been making tepache for a long time actually, but I was doing it at home, just practicing. The more I did, the more I learned. And when we opened Koa, I decided to do one at the bar actually. So it was a wild fermented drink that we use an entire pineapple. We chop it into pieces. Of course, we use organic pineapples because it's important that there's no pesticides on the skin of the pineapple. And on the skin of the pineapple, you have a lot of wild yeast and bacteria. and yeast such as Brettanomyces, which actually provides that sour, funky flavor to your product. So we would leave that in water that's been infused with cinnamon and sugar. The water has to be chlorine free, so you can't use water from the tap directly because it contains chlorine, and that kills off a lot of bacteria and yeast. So we'll just leave it to ferment, and after a couple of days, it really depends on the weather and the humidity. Sometimes it could take a week, sometimes it could take maybe a couple of days, and we would then bottle it, and then we will ferment it in the bottle condition it, so it will have natural bubbles, and we will serve it in a tiny bottles, soft drink bottles, with our own label on it. It got really, really popular, and from there on, we wanted to experiment more, doing different things. So we've done like mead, we've done rice wine, rice beer, kombuchas, of course, and basically pretty much all sort of fermented beverages we've tried in our bar, actually.
What are the drinks that you are most proud of?
I think, well, I would say all.
Yeah, that's a good start.
I would say all, because whatever we have on the menu is basically a work that consists of every single team member. So when we come up with a drink, we let everyone try in our bar. Unless if there's one person who doesn't like it, the drink doesn't go onto the menu. So we have to find the reason why he doesn't like it. Because in the end of the day, we're using mezcal and tequila, right? But people come to our bar. When they look at the menu, 90% of the drinks on the menu are mezcal and tequila. So we want to make sure, even though we use these products, we want the majority of the people to enjoy it. We don't want to turn them off. So that's what we do. We give the drink around to all our team members to taste, and they give their honest opinion about what they feel about the drink. Doesn't matter if the person is experienced or not, because every opinion counts to us. And from there, we try and to see whether the comment is logical, and from there on we try and tweak the drink to make sure everyone enjoys it in the end of the day, and that drink goes onto the menu. So that's why every drink on the menu we're proud of it. But of course, one of the best selling drinks we have is our take on a classic Paloma, which is a simple a twist on a classic drink. So we use a blend of tequila and mezcal, a bit of fresh lime. We use grapefruit soda, and then around the glass we use sal de gusano, which is the worm salt from Oaxaca. So that gives you like an umami explosion in your mouth, lots of flavor. But it goes really well with the Paloma, because Paloma is citrusy and refreshing. With that savory note on the rim of the glass, it gives you a very nice contrast. So that would be probably the best selling drink we have.
And how often do you refresh the menu?
Well, probably every week we have one new drink on the menu.
Okay, yeah. So it's a very much like of the dynamic menu. It's not
so
set.
we design our menu ourselves. Then we have this shop which helps us print the menu right across our bar. So it's super easy for us. We don't really announce, we're launching new menu. Every time when we have our guests coming back, they always see there's a new drink to try. And it's good because our menu is small. We only have maybe 7 to 8 drinks, signature, on the menu. But every week there's one new drink. So there's always something new for you to try. And we're not limited to what's on the menu. We're a fully stocked bar. So if you want to come in and order a Manhattan or Sazerac, whatever, we make it for you, because we have in small quantity of everything. We have gins. We try not to carry too many commercial products. We have some really interesting gin. For example, we have a gin from Okinawa that is actually distilled awamori with spices from Japan. So this is one example. We have some interesting rums as well. Beside the commercial products, we don't have much. We have, like I mentioned earlier, that we have some Mexican rums, for example. So if people want something with rum, sure, we give them something new to try. So we have everything in smaller quantities. We have a few Amaros here and there that could do pretty much all classic drinks.
So what advice would you give to someone like you who had the amazing idea and wants to open his own bar?
I think what I've learned opening Koa is do not rush into things. Take your time. It's it's never too late, because business is very risky. And of course, try and find investors that could invest in you. Don't use all your money to invest in a bar, because opening a bar is probably one of the most riskiest business out there. So try and find investors, try and find people who could add value to your business. And also at the same time, do not rush into things. Take things step by step, slowly and slowly. I think that's the best way. This is something I learned, and if I open a new bar, I don't want to go through the same kind of experience I did with Koa, like the first few months. But I think it was important for me too, because I learned a lot of things from that. But I don't think anyone needs to go through that. So I think take it slow.
Any regrets that you have in what you did?
Never. No regrets, actually.
Hashtag no regrets.
No regrets. I mean, if I, go back to 2017, I would have done the same thing, because, every bartender, one day they want to open their own venue. They want to open their own bar. I'm sure you want to do that as well, because then you have your own freedom to do whatever you want. You don't have to get approvals from anybody.
Yeah, that's very true.
And that's the sweetest thing, and I've seen a lot of bartenders now, around Asia opening their own bars, which is actually really good. And I really hope the best for everyone. And, it also helps the community in general, because if it's a bartender-owned bar, they put a lot of love, passion into the venue. Sometimes, there are people who have money. They just want to open a bar and they just don't understand the business. End up, they fail. So I think bartenders-driven bars are very important to the community right now. And hopefully we get more of that, in the future as well.
What's the future of Koa?
Well, like I said, we want to take things slowly. And right now, it's bad times in Hong Kong, so we're not going to do anything crazy now. Hopefully, when things go back to normal, we want to expand Koa. Hopefully we could have, maybe a few Koas around Asia. But in Hong Kong, I would say one is enough, because there's no need to have 2 or 3 Koas in Hong Kong. But yeah, we'll never say no to anything. I mean, if there's anything interesting that comes in front of us, we'll definitely consider. But I think right now we want to take it slow, because it's one of the worst times in Hong Kong. Once that's gone, we will look into it.
You have managed to achieve a lot of significant awards in a very short period of time. Was this something that you were aiming at, or was it sort of unexpected?
Well, winning awards, I think it is important for the team. It is important for the business, and also for yourself. It is a kind of acknowledgement that tells you that you're doing something right, and people are really appreciating what you're doing. So, however, I don't think this should be the aim, because if you open a bar and you say, oh, I want to aim to be Asia 50 or World 50, it is difficult. It's very stressful. I'd say focus on what you believe, focus on what you want to do, and then leave the rest to other people. If you do it right, people will come, people will enjoy, and eventually you will get awards. So I think this shouldn't be the priority, but focus on what you really want to do.
How did your wife see this whole thing?
Well, okay, so when we were in Singapore, when we got the highest new entry for the bar in Asia, and her reaction was like, oh, congratulations,
Cool
well
story,
done,
bro.
Yeah, very good. So I think everybody have, I think she would want me to spend more time with her, to be honest, with her and with the kid. But I'm just so tied up right now. But I think I need to find a balance between work and life. And I really want to spend more time with the family as well. And for her, it's like, I mean, she appreciates if the bar is doing well, if you're winning awards. But I think her priority right now is for me to spend more time with the family. Yeah.
I'm sure you get to do that.
I try my best. But hopefully 2020 will be, I would want to spend more time with the family. Yeah.
I think it's a nice thought to wrap this episode. I think there is a last question that I would like to ask you, which we ask everyone. It's like, if you could choose your very last drink, what would that drink be?
Oh, wow. I would say, surprisingly, it's not a tequila and mezcal cocktail. My favorite classic drink is actually a Sazerac.
Oh, really?
Yes. So if you come to my bar, please feel free to order a Sazerac, because I love making them and I love drinking them, actually. So Sazerac would be my choice.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time. It was awesome to chat to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.
We hope you enjoyed our interview with Jay. We are Unjiggered_media on Instagram, and you can follow our personal accounts at mmadiotti89 for Michele, Alex J. Murphy for myself, and Adrian Bessa for Adrian. Thank you for listening.